wanted to do this talk to honor Wendy in most part. And when she passed away in February, it seemed like a natural time to just kind of get an overview of everything that we did together, especially in light of the fact that we would not be doing any more books. So, but as I started to prepare the talk, I realized that this is just the tiniest beginning, because the amount of correspondence and sketches and interaction that I have on paper is just astonishing. I'd forgotten that before the time of email, we used to write letters to each other. And she and I wrote hundreds of letters, sometimes 3 in a week, that mixed together our work and our children and our gardens and our pickling and applesauce and everything else, all kind of jumbled together. So this, I really couldn't cover it all in preparing this. So if at times it gets a little confusing, just raise your hand, because it was hard to pull off enough to line up for tonight. That wasn't too much. So let's see. That's 1988, when we had already done some books. And this one is the first book that we ever did. I was still in college. Wendy was 4 years ahead of me, and she had been living in New York City, pounding the pavement with her portfolio and going to agents and publishers to establish herself as an illustrator. And in 1967, when I was junior in college, she became fascinated with the songs of the British Isles that had to do with fishermen and their families. And so she, in 1967, she sent me a collection of those and suggested that since I was studying music composition in college and had also just written music for a picture book I did with my parents, she said, let's make a book with your music, these words, and my pictures. So that was our first collaboration, and at the end of that letter she wrote, here's to many more collaborations between us two creeps. And I have no idea where that came from. Something must have happened that I have no documentation for, but it was sort of un-Wendy-like. So this next, this letter that you see here is on paper with a letterhead that she designed. She made many different letterheads over the course of her lifetime. And this is one of them. This was a letter about not starting yet on one of the songs that she wanted to do something further to. She was already looking ahead to our next joint venture, and she said, I'm going up to the Steinauer Press next Wednesday, and will tell you after that what our next project will be, and whether I want you to write an alphabet or do pictures or what. I'm also not sure why she thought I would do pictures, but that's what she wrote. This book was published in 1969, and so that was the beginning of 50 years of collaborating together. We published, I think, 16 books. We had many that we talked about, made dummies for, exchanged ideas about, that did not get published, but that's part of the creative process, that you don't, not everything that you come up with comes to fruition. This was our next book after Fisherman Lullabies, and it started out as a songbook. I feel like when I'm reading, it's maybe, whoops, oh, there. And so, but after she, when we were discussing it, and I was going to be writing the songs, I was apparently insisting that this time around, the songs in the book had to be written, the music part had to be written out in my musical script. I seemed to think that that was going to make it more authentic or something. But Wendy wrote me a letter about that. And she said, about the music, why don't you write out one of the songs on printed music paper using the proper ink and so on, India, as it would appear in the book, and send it to me. My only concern is aesthetic. If it looks all right with the pictures and so on, fine. The only memories I have of your music writing is that the stems are all squiggly and it's all scratchy and scraggly looking. Pardon me for saying so. But that, i.e. scratchy, scraggly, and crooked, I do not want with my pictures. Perhaps I'm underestimating you. If it just isn't going to work, then you'll have to resign yourself to having it set mechanically or having me do it. And that is my last word on the subject. Though I persist in not seeing your point. If you are consistent in your reasoning, you would want to write out the words in your own handwriting as well, instead of having it set in type. This is going to be a great book. Keep writing a few more songs. They are too good to not write. Well, in the end, that book, we dropped the music component of it anyway, so we didn't have to discuss that anymore. But later, way later, we did do another songbook, and the music was set mechanically with no argument from me, apparently. So, Fisherman Lullabies, in a way, seems to me like a very abstract book. It was sort of like a warm-up, because it wasn't very personal. It didn't seem very personal to me. But every other book that we did after that was really based on our lives and our childhood. The next book, the Father Fox's Penny Rhymes, came from I just somehow dreamed up this village of foxes and all of the shenanigans that they would be doing. And I guess I'm going to read just a part of the letter. I don't know if you can you read the type from back there? Anyway, in the letter I give her my description of what I'm picturing as the sort of flavor of this community. This family or community of foxes is rather poor. They are not averse to stealing. In fact, they have to at times in order to survive. When someone does occasionally have a penny or two, it is probably spent on some special trinket for friend or relative, or on some small luxury, such as some good wine or a wristwatch. On the whole, they are characters who love each other and love life, making light of their hardships. I see this book as a picaresque, very colorful and old-fashioned sort of feeling. Knickers, stripes, laces, icicles, nice baby fox faces. I'll expect to hear from you immediately, if not sooner. And indeed, Wendy wrote back 2 days later saying, Father Fox is beautiful. So once the musical element was eliminated, the resulting picture and rhyme book became our most popular and well-known title. It was nominated for the National Book Award, which meant that we had an all-expenses-paid whirlwind trip to New York City and silver sticker on the jacket of the book. And that was probably one of our most fun times because we had no money. Part of the reason we wrote so many letters was that half the time one or the other of us had no telephone. But when we went to New York, it was really a big treat. Months after the National Book Awards ceremony, someone on the panel told us in private that the only reason our book didn't take the prize was because we were voted too young to receive such an award. And I think it caused quite some annoyance on the part of other members of the panel. So this picture was taken at one of the events surrounding that trip. Father Fox's Penny Rhymes purports to be about animals dressed in people clothes, but it's really, the rhymes and the pictures directly express the feeling and the sights of growing up in a small Vermont village. My siblings and I were a motley crew, dungarees and flannel shirts and suspenders, just like all the Foxes. And the clothing, right down to the detail in this picture, the dress that Mother Fox has on, that fabric was the same as a dress that our mom made for the little girls that wore it one by one. And the pin cushion up on the mantle there and the old clock, it's all just totally accurate. The chair that Father Fox is sitting in is just like the ones that were around our table at home, and Dad used to tell us stories by the fire. So when that book went to press, we were already working on our next book, which was going to be Tom Fox and the Apple Pie. And Tom Watson was just a little stinker at that point. And so he was kind of the hero in that story. A letter from Wendy to me starts with a list of all the latest reviews and accolades for Penny Rhymes, and then it goes on about Tom Fox. She writes, "Please send me a dedication for Tom Fox. I've had trouble getting started on the pictures, but am now going full blast and will soon be done, so hurry. Also, the manuscript and text corrections are your responsibility, as I can't keep track as to who's written to whom. You handle it. I've taken care of the ... business we were discussing before by respacing, but everything else is up to you." She ends the same letter by saying, "Father Fox has been selling about 250 a week, I hear, and I'm going up next week to oversee the second printing, 75,000 of them for England. I hope we make lots of money, and then Michael and I can move into a house." So the theme of Wendy giving me directives makes a lot of sense, because she had much more experience than I did. She was also much more thoughtful and careful, because she was in charge not just of illustrating, but she designed all of our books as well, which involves picking the fonts and establishing the layout and the sequence and all of that. And I was rather impetuous and impatient, always trying to hurry, as this example shows. This is a little bit embarrassing, but anyway, I decided it would give you true insight into the way things work. This is one page of 4 that I sent to Wendy to show her my idea for a new book. It's supposed to represent the introduction to the book. And I can't believe how rudimentary and sloppy it is. Included with it was just a single page of text and a rough table of contents. And I had the nerve to say to her in this letter, "I'm champing at the bit, wanting to see my names book in print. After working on it for a year or more, I'm anxious to get it out and see what sort of reception it gets. When can we send this in, dummy and manuscript together?" I hadn't even given her a manuscript. "It's a tribute to Wendy's forbearance that she took such offerings seriously. She had already explained her point of view when we were working on Father Fox's Penny Rhymes." At which point I had apparently done the same thing, tried to hurry it all up. She wrote, "I'm working out some pictures for Father Fox and having a ball doing it. However, I see that I cannot really decide on either the size or the shape of the book until you have written the music. Alack, alas. I have to know how many lines of music a song will take and how much accompaniment there will be, and have to then fit that in with a good size of type. And furthermore, I'm hoping the songs can be written out line for line as they are when just poems, to make reading more pleasing to the eye. I'm going to go ahead with what I'm doing and show it to the editor, but I have a feeling she will want to know the above-mentioned size and shape before going ahead with a contract, since they have to know production costs. Also, she will want the whole manuscript, and I would need that too. So, as I believe I mentioned earlier, you really don't save much time by sending them something unfinished. The next book we do should be worked out before we submit it. So, this isn't the next book. I skipped some. I'm not talking about all of them. It would take all night. The most unique thing about working with Wendy, I think, was that because of our shared history together, we could really marry image and words in our books, and we had voluminous back and forth about how to do that down to the last little detail. And again, this one reflects really completely what Christmas was like at our home, the whole story, based on mice in the walls, which we had, and which I always thought was a rather nice, cozy sound. But the editor for the book didn't see it that way. And at the end of the book, where the mice have been running around on the Christmas tree and inside the piano and everything all night long, when the people come down in the morning, it said they did notice a few odd details. And the editor called me up and she said, I think we need to change that because, I mean, it's just going to make people think of mouse droppings. And we didn't change it, but it was very close. But as Wendy and I both always said, when I wrote a story, I always pictured it with Wendy's illustrations. And when she came up with a new character or sketched a scene, she imagined my words telling a story. So I would say that the examples I've read to you of, somewhat of a disagreement on a topic were about as close as we ever came to having a real, we never had a fight, and we had very little that we disagreed about. We just always would go back and forth on a point of contention until we reached an agreeable solution for both of us. And that, I feel like that was extremely rare. Once she got my first manuscript, we wrote back all these letters to brainstorm. Sometimes my idea would be changed just a little bit as to how I put something, or her artwork or the layout or the sequence of events would be changed based on that brainstorming. So now I have a sequence of 4 letters that we wrote back and forth during this book. There were many more, but these were close together, so I thought it might be interesting to hear. The first one was with the manuscript that I first sent her, and with that I had sent a cassette tape of myself reading it out loud because it was dedicated and created for her daughter Mary, who was 4 at the time. And my husband and I were at their house for Christmas, and that night I had just told Mary a bedtime story, which turned out to be this book. So I wrote to Wendy, my vision of the flavor of the book. The mice are rather ordinary mice, doing what any mice would do faced with a Christmas tree. I see one of your wonderful illustrations showing a mouse poised beneath a branch of the tree, ornaments and presents surrounding him. There are two things I at first put in the text, and then I took them out, thinking they'd be better just in the pictures. I wondered whether Santa could have a handkerchief sticking out of his hip pocket with his initials on it. Later, it could be seen lying on the floor where it has fallen out of his pocket, unbeknownst to him. And in the final picture, it has reached the attic, and Brown Mouse is asleep on it with the initials showing. In the final picture, I see Brown Mouse asleep on the hanky. All the bits of things, a twig of fir, a cranberry, a piece of tinsel, a piece of popcorn, those things are lying about haphazardly. It's only their juxtaposition which suggests Christmas to us. In other words, the mice didn't erect the twig as a tree and hang all the stuff on it, but have it in a mouse-like pile or just incidentally lying there. Thus, Brown Mouse is not lying neatly under the blanket, but rather on it or half in, half out, mouse fashion. And, well, I don't have very many pictures from the book. So if anything during this part is confusing and you want to ask me something, just interrupt me, because I sort of talk about details that you might not see. These are all from the dummy now. This is the first dummy, and this would be the cover. And I'll just go back one. There's the dummy, and here it was the final picture. So they're really quite close. This was the first spread that starts. It was Christmas Eve, and in the big house, the children ran around in their bare feet and nighties. In this one, Wendy's written a note at the top margin that says, "Children in bed, general light coming from window. Too much tooth," that's referring to the texture of the paper. "Harder to get detail, graphite black pencil." Now, originally in the story, it had the mice seeing the Christmas tree from the doorway of the pantry. And as Wendy got started making the illustrations, she decided we needed to make a revised floor plan that both text and image would agree with. She has written one of the comments up in the... Oh, I didn't realize that shows up there. It's probably been jumping all over the place. This comment: "Couldn't see tree from pantry doorway no matter how you stretch it, but could from kitchen doorway." So ultimately, we fixed the floor plan and the text so that the path of the mice made. Curious about the backwards writing up there, which I guess was on the other side. I used a mirror because I was really intrigued, and it turned out to be some kind of a list. It says stuffed peppers, cheese pie, chicken Chinese. This is one of the later pictures in the book. This spread is where the mice, Brown Mouse was patient, and finally the big clock in the hall struck 12, and then the mice can come down because the people are all in bed. The sticky notes that you'll be seeing in the dummy are my notes to myself after Wendy and I have consulted, probably on the phone, with the dummy in hand. This sticky note says, "Final pick, eliminate procession," the procession of mice. Close-up of mice at doorway to living room. And this is the picture that resulted. In here, where Santa is stuffing the stockings and putting things under the tree, the sticky note says, "Text was elaborated in this part, so the next picture is Brown Mouse inside the piano instead of this one." And just an aside here that I just realized, a lot of times when I'm giving talks, people want to know where I get the ideas for a book. And this book of Brown Mouse happens to have, I've discovered over the years, like 4 different ways that this idea came to me. And the oldest one was a letter I found from my dad when I was 8 and I was away at camp and quite homesick. And he wrote me a letter saying that he had been downstairs and he heard this little tinkly noise in the living room. And when he went in, there was a pretty little mouse, as he put it, playing a tune with its teeth inside the piano. And when he came in the room, the mouse got scared, ran away, and here is his music book that he dropped. And he made this tiny, like inch-square music book with little scribbles. So that was one thing. And then the final picture in the book where Brown Mouse is asleep on a jumble of stuff was when we decided it was time for our youngest sister to clean her room after a number of years without so doing. And I was assigned to help her with the closet. And when I pulled out this box from the lowest shelf, this mother mouse came running, poked her head up. She was in a jumble of stuff, and she had a whole bunch of babies in there. So, yep, it was cozy, all right. And then, as I said, I made up the story for Mary when she was 4, and I feel like there's one other thing, but I can't remember. Okay, when Christmas morning came, the sticky note says, Brown Mouse finding, quote, something special, as it says in the text, also added text after this dummy was made. The final version will have other mice instructing him, followed by a picture of him holding tinsel and looking back at the tree. So that is Brown Mouse. So coming back to the theme of childhood experience providing the inspiration for the books. Not only, fabrics and room furnishings and settings like fairs and farms, but also the people were often taken straight from our past. Lovingly portrayed always, with their charms and foibles. Penny Rhymes features several people that you may know. In fact, I think a couple are in the room. This is one of them. Wendy and I are this is the dedication, dedicated to Clyde Watson. We were lowering the book on a rope down from a tree to Cammie. I think she was about 6 at the time. Cammie's on skis, and Wendy and I are wearing coats that I recognize. I had this parka with a furry edge to the hood as we scrambled to get that to her on skis. The dedication, okay, maybe you can read it, for Nanny because she's neat, for Cammie because she's sweet, and for Soup Spoon because she's both. So those are all Cammie, but her family nickname was Nanny, and Soup Spoon, I think, was probably a nickname she wasn't very fond of. It had something to do with how she sipped her soup. Sorry to embarrass you, Cam. This is the dedication page for Father Fox's Feast of Songs, dedicated to my son Julian. And Wendy drew the picture, I'm sure, when she was at our house, because when he was a tiny fellow, he loved singing, and he would usually cross his legs and just sing from the heart. And so that was what she did for him. This picture and poem were made for Tom Watson when he was, I think, 5 or 6. And in it, he is Thomas Tinkertoes. On the boat, you'll see that the name is Linda and Peter, 2 other siblings. And I'm just going to read you the rhyme. It goes, Thomas Tinkertoes, upside down and away he goes. He's off to call upon the Queen in blue and crimson velveteen. this book, Quips and Quirks, this was one of the ones I had the most fun with because I love word origins. And I decided it'd be really fun to make a book for children that kind of introduced them to the study of etymology. And from looking at old slang books, it's really old ones, like from 1600s, it seemed like one of the best ways to do that would be using names that you can call people, epithets. So that's what this is, Book of Epithets. It's full of reference to people we know because of this fact. Before we got to that point, I had sent Wendy this, which is a block print titled Blabbermouth. the sort of faint one, I guess, it's just a proof. It's printed on the back. It's the same picture. But then I also included this sort of little, it's only about this big, miniature dummy, I guess, to show her what some of the names and categories would be, and the other one, what a potential rhyme would be. I don't think that rhyme got into the book. So in that book, the dedication page is dedicated to Ragabash Bear, crumbs in his beard and all. That person is in the room, but I will not reveal him due to privacy issues. But when the lights are on, I'm sure you'll be able to pick him out. We had to include our husbands in this book. So this is Wendy's husband, Michael, as Master Greedy Guts. And the next one is going to be my husband. And the details in the portraits, if you know them at all, will give them away. Michael's hat, that's taken straight from reality. The score of Rigoletto, because not only is he loved to eat, but he is an opera singer. Probably he liked lemon meringue pie a lot. And this is my husband, who has trolley bags. And that apparently is the last picture. Except for all the ones I didn't show. So if people have questions, I guess I forgot to read these other two letters, but about Brown Mouse. Well, I'll read one part. First, there's a long bit where we're discussing the number of characters. Yeah, you can turn that on. That'd be good. It'd be easier to read. Thank you. And then I wrote, this is me writing to Wendy. As for the color, although, I do have to tell you the beginning. I wrote, I was interested, not mad, about your suggestions for the appearance of the manuscript, and after fooling with it for a while, decided your preferred version was pretty much agreeable to me. Then it goes on about the length of the lines. When it comes to the description of the tree, I thought perhaps the poem-like text in which I retain the shorter lines, as you suggested, could be indented a little and spaced away from what precedes and follows, just to set it apart visually. So go ahead and work on it as is, with the understanding that I get a chance to change or approve your final division of the manuscript into lines. As for the color, although it would be charming in black and white, which she had suggested, I can't help seeing it ideally in color. All the colors and richness of Christmas, you know? Or even black and white spreads alternately with color, like the math books. Maybe this would be good. Or just bits of color amid the black and white, like black and white mice scurrying with red cranberries. Commercially, too, I bet the color would make it more appealing, especially in its small size. Perhaps it needs color to make it the more gem-like. And Wendy wrote back, your idea about the full color being more commercial and gem-like, of course, is right. And as I've been working on the book, I've thought that the whole point of doing it would be to make it as commercial as possible, not in lowering standards. But the story is perfect for a large, timeless, mass appeal book, and I've been trying to match the pictures to that mood. Nothing dramatic, no strange angles or viewpoints, just plain old-fashioned good pictures. So, anyway, does anybody have a question?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did you take offense when Wendy would say things like that she didn't want your scraggly music notes next to her pictures?
Well, I was annoyed. I think she was also going by like something that wasn't meant to be finished. I actually have a slide of that. Oh.
Uh-oh.
It's all right.
It's okay, we'll come right back on.
I think I do. I'm not
Just trying to keep the light out of your eyes.
Oh, this is one that I didn't show too. This is a postcard which discusses a whole bunch of things, and the upside down part says, "Here's a name for you, Edward Clapsaddle." She found it in the phone book. Maybe she was, oh, it's not there.
It's coming.
It should come back.
Okay, it's not crucial. Anyway, yeah.
I'm just impressed that you were both able to be so open about what your ideas were with the other,
Yeah.
and yet you still were able to work together and not get mad.
Yeah. I think the time when we were probably the most out of sync was that I decided at a certain point I didn't want to use the agent that we've been using together because I felt she was too slow for me. So I said, well, I'm not gonna use Marilyn. I'm gonna send my stuff in by myself. And Wendy felt that I would be, benefiting from Marilyn's expertise and everything, but not, giving her a cut. And I have a letter that I wrote back saying that, what did I say? It was very clever, I think I said that, that Wendy would be getting that information whether or not I was involved, and therefore it wasn't really adding or subtracting anything for me not to be involved with the agent. So, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, it wasn't meant to be finished, but maybe this is what she meant by messy. I don't know. That's one of the songs from Fisherman Lullaby. Here's the way it looked when it was published, and it's Wendy got to write it out, not me. I know from the sharp signs, and it all looks a little too perfect for me to have been done by me. I don't mean I don't like it. Yeah. Oops.
Do you have any audio of the music? Like just to hear?
Of that music? No, not of that. I mean, I do with the books for sale. I have a CD from the songbook,
Oh, great.
and the songbook is there too. Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
yeah. So, yeah.
Did each of you do a fair amount of work separately, or is most of the work collaborative between you two?
Wendy did tons of books and illustrated lots of things for other people as well as for me. I did one book with my parents. I wrote the music. I did one book with Cammie, Mr. Toad, which is a great book. That was really fun to work with a different artist. And then I did do one other one with someone I'd never heard of, and I had the publisher just wanted me to do it. And I went ahead and let it happen, and I was very pleased. I don't think I brought that one. Yeah. But I didn't have a part in anywhere near as many books as Wendy did, because I was always pretty much doing a lot of other things. She was very, very focused on her professional career. and that extended into every aspect of it, like how her loyalty to that agent and her professionalism in attending events and all kinds of things that I didn't necessarily do. Yeah.
So in the beginning, you talked about the letter writing, and sometimes you didn't have telephones. And I was wondering, as technology changed, how many things you collaborated, and how did that evolve? Or
You mean as far as how we
communicated?
Yeah. Well, we talked on the phone a lot more, and we emailed quite a lot. But we also saw each other. Well, sometimes we lived quite far apart, but we saw each other several times a year. I don't think we ever actually sat down and worked on a book in the same room, but we would, throw out ideas and so on in person. But
Did you end up sending pictures back and like email, like sending images on
Oh,
the
yeah.
letters?
No, actually. No, I don't think we did. Wendy always would send me a Xerox of the dummy still, hard copy,
Yeah.
which is much better because you're turning the pages and it's much more real.
And the color is more.
I mean, color, yeah, right, yeah. Somebody else?
Well, I just had an interesting comment. I got here a little late, but not about you and Wendy, but writing children's books. Carol Adler, who comes here in the summer, plays tennis with us. She's 86, wrote about 30 books, children's books, and they're all about love and everything. And she submitted a book, she told me, 2 years ago. By the way, she never played a sport in her life, took up tennis 7 years ago, plays good tennis, 86 with us. But anyway, she was rejected by the publisher, said kids want just violence and stuff. So the things she wrote about all these years, bestsellers, and just nobody wants them. They just kids want,
Yeah,
what they see.
I'm not surprised
And
because.
yours with Christmas brings back a lot of emotion to me, the nice
Mhm,
Christmases and love,
mhm.
so, nice.
Well, I think the kind of books that we did really are made for parents and children to enjoy together. And, for example, someone in the audience was telling me that her son, who's 36, still remembers the books. And everyone who writes to me, it's not, I caught my kid reading How Brown the Mouse Is. But, we read this every year together or whatever. And also, getting books accepted now, it just got harder and harder and harder because they want certain categories. They don't want you to use big words. They want to know exactly what age it's for. And I started having a lot less fun with it. I haven't really been doing a lot of children's books lately for that reason. It's just not satisfying.
If any of your books become like a series, what happens to those after Christmas?
I don't think you want to. No sequels. Well, the Father Fox's songbook is, I guess you could call it a sequel. It's all the rhymes made into songs. And then there's Father Fox's Christmas. Yeah. Christmas rhymes, I mean. So. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.